I'm Henry the Eighth, I am, Henry the Eighth, I am. I got married to the widow next door. She'd been married 7 times before, and everyone was an Henry. She wouldn't have a Willie or a Sam, no Sam. I'm her 8th old man, I'm Henry, Henry the Eighth I am. Second verse, same as the first. I'm Henry the Eighth I am, Henry the Eighth I am. I got married to the widow next door. She'd been married 7 times before, and everyone was an Henry. Wouldn't have a Willie or a Sam, no Sam. I'm her 8th old man, I'm Henry, Henry the Eighth I am, Henry the Eighth I am. Well, you're probably wondering why I sang that kind of crazy song. What's that got to do with food, you ask? Absolutely nothing. You're right. It doesn't have anything to do with food. Well, we're back in the kitchen after a kind of long time. It's been a while since we've cooked something or made something together. And the reason I sang that song, really, is because it's by a group from the 60s called Herman's Hermits. And if you don't remember them, you can look them up online. They had some good songs. Mrs. Brown, you've got a lovely daughter. Remember that one? Yeah, well, that's one of many. Anyway, the reason I sang that is today we are going to take a trip back to the late 70s, 1970s that is. Not the 1870s when I was a toddler, but the 1970s when I was a teenager. And we're going to make something that was a fad back then. You can probably remember things like chain letters. Well, this is kind of the food equivalent to a chain letter. It's called Herman. It's a Herman starter. And basically it's a sourdough starter, but a little sweeter than your normal sourdough starter. And you can use it to make muffins, coffee cakes, breads, pancakes, all kinds of different things. So today we're going to learn how to make the starter. It's very easy, very simple. You need basically 4 ingredients. Alrighty, let's get to it. I'm going to bring the camera over so you can have a better look. Alright, let's get to this. Your first and main ingredient, biggest ingredient, is 2 cups of white flour. Then you want 3 tablespoons of sugar. And 1 packet or half a teaspoon, that's a 1/4 ounce packet or half a teaspoon of active dry yeast. Those are your dry ingredients. Once you've got those in the bowl, now you want to do this in the container you're going to keep it in, or store it in. That way you don't have to transfer it. But once you've got that in your container, just go ahead and stir it all together. Make sure it's well blended. There, you got half the job done already. And now to that you're going to add 2 cups of warm water. Now if you prefer, you can use milk. I like water. Milk has the tendency to go off. Water, not usually. And now you're just going to blend that together until it'll be either a batter or a dough. A lot of it depends on your climate, your altitude, a lot of different things, but it doesn't really matter. So you just want to whip that together really, really well. Make sure it's well blended. And you can see mine's kind of runny and creamy. If yours is a little bit doughy or that's fine. If it's a bit lumpy, that's okay too. Once that's done, I'm just going to scrape this down off the sides, back into the bowl. There we go. What you're going to do is cover it with a piece of cloth. You could use a cheesecloth or whatever. I'm going to put an elastic band around that. If I can find one that's big enough to go around. I think that one will work. Now you want a breathable top because that's going to create gas as it ferments. And the last thing you want is it blowing the lid off your thing. And now you just need to keep this in a warm place for the next 4 days. Okay, and you're going to stir this every day for the first 3 to 4 days. And on day 5, this is a 10-day cycle for Herman. On day 5, you're going to feed Herman. And to feed him, you're going to want to use 1 cup of flour and 1.5 tablespoons of sugar. So on day 5, you will stir in 1 cup of flour. Now I would blend them together first. 1 cup of flour, 1.5 tablespoons of sugar. Blend them together and then stir them into your Herman. And then you're going to let it go for another 5 days. Now I like to stir it daily, and I would recommend that. And just need to let it sit out. After the 10th day, you will either use most of Herman, about 2/3 of him, to make something, or you can put him in the fridge, or you can actually even freeze the starter and let it sit for months in the freezer until you're ready to use it, and you can thaw it out, activate it, and off you go. Now for recipes to make things, just go on the internet to Google or Bing or whatever your favorite search engine is, and type in Herman starter recipes. Like I say, this was a huge fad back in the late 70s, early 80s. Kind of died out over the years, but it's still a good starter recipe. And the thing I like about it is if you get tired of it after a while, you can just put it in the freezer. My father got into Herman. He was never much of a baker or a cook, but for some reason, somebody gave my mother a Herman starter. That's why this is sort of like a chain letter. So you always have enough. You can give some to somebody else if you don't want to use it yourself. So you can make a coffee cake and still give a cup of starter to somebody else to get them going if you want to do that. Don't have to, but you can. Anyway, somebody gave my mother a starter of it. She tried it, made a coffee cake. My dad fell in love with this Herman coffee cake. And my mother wasn't overly thrilled, didn't want to be bothered with it, so my dad took it over. And he kept that starter going from, it was probably like 1980 or 81 until my mother passed away in 2003. And every week, well, every 10 days, I should say, every 10 days he would make a Herman coffee cake. And he would cut that coffee cake into 10 pieces, and he'd make it last the 10 days until it was ready to go again. Now, how he didn't end up sick and tired of it, I don't know, but he did that. And it was actually my father who gave me a starter of it when I used to live in Eureka, California. My parents lived in McKinleyville, California, which is, about a 30-minute drive away from where I lived. And I lived next door to a delightful couple named Claudia and Harold Kane. And they were in their 80s. This was back in, probably 82, 83, somewhere around there. And they fell in love with it and kept it going. Well, they went away for a couple of weeks to visit one of their sons. They had 3 children, a daughter and 2 sons. And one of their sons lived, I think it was in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And so they went to visit Clark. And the son that lived in Eureka was looking after the house. Well, I was out in the backyard one day, probably 2 or 3 days after they left. And their son saw me in the backyard and he said, "Ian." I said, "Yes, what? How are you doing?" "Oh, good, good." He says, "Have you noticed anything different about Mom lately?" I stopped to think and kind of thought about her hairdo and that. I said, "No, not that I can think of." "Well, has she been acting strangely at all?" I thought about it. "No, pretty much same old Claudia. No, nothing unusual or different." I said, why do you ask?" And he said, he says, "They asked me to come over, a couple of times a week while they're gone just to check on things and take care of the plants. But I noticed a note on the fridge door, and it says, 'Beat Herman daily and feed him every 10 days. Who's Herman?" Of course, after I explained to him what it was about, he goes, "Oh, okay. I don't have to worry about Mom then." I said, "No, you don't have to worry about Mom." I said, "If it said beat Harold daily and feed him every 10 days, then you might have to worry, but it said Herman, so you're in good shape." Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this little recipe for today. Maybe down the road here we'll make a Herman coffee cake or something, or some muffins, and you can see Herman at work. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.